Sherry.
I am with Deputy Quinlivan. Thank you, Cahera. Minister, first of all, can I welcome the opportunity to again have a debate on public broadcasting. We had one a couple of weeks ago, and you might remember I offered during that debate to meet you in person as well to discuss this important issue, and that offer still stands. I think it would be useful. I genuinely believe that we need to get to a point where there is some sort of political consensus on this issue, because we need, in my view, to protect public broadcasting, not just our public broadcaster, but public broadcasting. And I think we need to look more holistically at public broadcasting. We're talking here today specifically about RTE, and RTE are a big part of that. But I think the Minister would accept that many local radio stations and other forms of media provide a public service as well. And I think when we're looking at reforming and restructuring and re-examining public broadcasting, it has to be bigger than RTE. But yes, RTE is obviously a big factor in all of that. It's also important to point out, Minister, that there needs to be cultural, financial, organisational and structural changes at RTE. They need to happen, irrespective of the funding crisis they have, irrespective of the fact that they are looking for changes to the licence fee, changes to how the money is collected, and they obviously need to increase their revenue. They need to get their house in order in a number of different ways. We had the premature announcement of their restructuring plan. I think the Minister has acknowledged that that was made public not in the best way, in a desirable way, but it happened the way it happened as a consequence of a leak. But when I listened to the Director-General on many of the media programmes, Minister, and I don't know what your view is on this, I wasn't entirely convinced that the plan will succeed and they will reach the targets that they set for themselves. It didn't seem to come with very clear, specific targets. It didn't seem to be as fully costed when you look at all the individual pieces of the overall restructuring plan. There was lots of caveats and ifs, buts and maybes, and I think I'd be concerned in relation to some elements of it and whether or not they will actually be able to achieve a lot of what they said. And I don't know, Minister, is this something that you signed off on? Did you sign off on this restructuring plan? Did it require your sign-off, either formally or informally? But I would have some concerns, and Deputy Quinlan will talk about some concerns we have about what was announced. But I think the bigger point is, can they actually follow through? We also mentioned in the last debate we had on this issue, Minister, that there are issues that people have in relation to salaries in RTE, and I accept the fact and I welcome the fact that there will be some movement in this area, although we'll have to wait and see how that's going to work out, because there are people with contracts, and I think this again is voluntary, asking people to take the 15% and the 10% pay cuts that have been proposed, but we'll see how it works out. Nobody in this chamber believes that cutting the pay of big presenters and cutting the pay of the executives will solve RTE's financial crisis. There's nobody pretending that is the case, but it's symbolic of what's necessary. The optics of the 400,000, 500,000, 300,000 euro figure that some of these big presenters are on when it's public broadcasting paid by the taxpayer, I think rightly angers people, and it's right that those issues be addressed. There are also issues, I think, Minister, as well in relation to class and RTE, and I've raised this directly with the Director-General and with RTE. I don't believe RTE at all times reflects modern Ireland. I don't think it reflects modern Dublin. It reflects what many would see as a couple of postcodes in Dublin. But does it reflect working-class communities? Do we hear their stories? Very often the stories we hear of working-class communities can be very negative, but there are hugely positive stories that those working-class communities have to tell. And yes, many of them have their struggles. And many of the struggles that they have are a consequence of bad policies. But they have very positive stories to tell, very vibrant communities that don't always get the space that others get, because some of the weekend programmes on RTE Radio, for example, have the chattering classes and the middle classes having a conversation about issues which are important to them, not always connecting with ordinary working people and their struggles. So I think that has to be part of a wider review as well of public broadcasting. Minister, I said to you a number of times, and I say this sincerely, there does need to be political leadership, and that goes for all of us, both government and opposition. We can't have it every way where we rail against some of the decisions that have been made, some of the staff cuts that will impact the closure in Limerick, for example, of Lyric, or partial closure at least, some of those consequences that bite, and at the same time then not put our money where our mouth is, or support reforms which are necessary to put RTE on a sustainable basis. Because you talked about it yourself, what's the alternative? What's the alternative to having a national broadcaster? It's more private ownership of the media. We already have problems with one individual who owns huge amounts of the media. Is that where we want to go? Do we want the Fox Newses of this world and have equivalents here that give us the news and not have what's considered to be fair, balanced, and have all of the protections that public broadcasting gives? I don't believe, Minister, that's where we need to go, and I don't believe that's where the vast majority of people believe we should go either. There will be some people that will say to hell with RTE and the state broadcaster. But if you believe in public services, then you should believe in public broadcasting. And that brings me to what we need to do, Minister. I have said to you before that the funding for independent production has been cut from 80 million to 40 million. That was a very significant cut. We want to see that reversed. In fact, we want to see the 80 million provided directly from the Exchequer over a number of years. That, one, would see more funding provided to independent producers, independent screenwriters that create jobs in the regions. That money be ring-fenced for that. But also, if the entire 80 million was funded through the Exchequer, and that's done in a fair way and a progressive way, rather than simply increasing the, the licence fee, that would be better, I think, for RTE, better for independent production, better for jobs, and it would mean money that could be freed up then to do other things. We do need, obviously, to have discussion about enforcement of the licensing fee. Nobody can stand over the high levels of non-payment. And again, that's where I think, Minister, there needs to be some sort of political consensus. And I think you have a responsibility to reach out to the opposition and reach out to others to try and bring that about. The perception is the can has been kicked down the road for 5 years and let them wait. I don't know whether that's simply to get any parties over the election or whether it's ideological or what it is, but it's not right, Minister, and it won't work. And I think, as I said to you a number of weeks ago, I'm prepared to meet you or any political party on this issue to try and see is there some consensus politically that can be achieved so that we have real changes and action in this area and not more talk.